You know, Mike, our body can be seen as a reflection of our attitudes, our thinking, what we are doing. Sort of represents many things that come from our mind, don't you
Right.
think?
Well, when you see somebody on the sidewalk, you can tell if they're down or they're energetic or they're not feeling well. I mean, that's just their way about them. But even as you use your body, through your life, certain parts will get stronger or overused, or
Yeah,
things will change about it.
yeah. But it is interesting that certain parts of our bodies are telling signs. And it's our great pleasure to have Donna Maxine White, who has had 20 years involved in better understanding the human spirit, the human soul, the auras. And it's our pleasure to welcome you, Donna. Thank you very much for coming on the Forum of Reality.
Thank you for having me.
And one of the areas that we're going to be discussing is palmistry. You do a lot of different things, but
Yes.
perhaps you would tell the listening audience, the viewing audience, some things about you, how you got involved, and
How did you get started on this path?
yeah.
Well, when I was very young, when I was only 6 and my older sister was 12, she bought her first pack of tarot cards, and she used to practice on me when I was only a little girl. So obviously all the information became stored in my subconscious mind. And when I was about 17 or 18, me and my friends started, we bought a pack of cards and started practicing. And I was the one that just seemed to connect with them. So my main base comes from tarot. That's what I love. I've made my own pack of tarot cards, which I really enjoyed doing. And gradually from that, because sometimes people would travel a long way, and I couldn't, sometimes you can't read. So I did the palmistry. I learned the palmistry. So it would help me understand because the palm works different than the cards. And they can tell you about your emotions. It can predict the future, but it's a different tool. So I really went into the palmistry as to go alongside the tarot. And then gradually other things grow from it. Obviously, the longer you're involved, the more I understood about energy and auras and chakras. And gradually over the years, as everybody are really, as we're moving into the fifth dimension, we've all become more enlightened. And so, I'm constantly growing the same as everybody else.
Okay, your beginning kind of brought up a question for me. Is on a lot of these things, I know from what I do with the QAHT, we are probably careful and probably don't do a lot with children. And can you or should you read cards for children or palms for children? And when should you start that if not?
I would say not to read, certainly not tarot cards. My mum, as soon as she found that my 12-year-old sister had bought her own cards, and she banned them from us for a little while till we were older. They do make some very good children oracle cards now to help children if they're maybe being bullied or have fear. And, there are some really good children's cards available. But palmistry is different. I feel it would benefit every parent to learn the palm.
Okay.
Because it can help you understand where your child's needs are, what would be good for them, what area of their life. I think if a parent learned basic palmistry, it could really help guide a child on their pathway.
Okay, I wasn't sure if maybe the lines weren't developed yet or what, but I guess they are.
When the lines form when we're still in the womb, the major lines that ultimately predict your destiny form when we're still growing inside. And then a baby is born with that destiny showing. And then gradually, as it gets a little bit older, all of those lines sort of disappear. And again, just as we do, day-to-day lines can appear in the palm. And then as the child becomes older, it goes more back into its destiny path.
I see.
But
Well, one of the questions that I have, having read this and read that, some individuals feel that the right hand or the left hand is the dominant one and should read. What's your feeling about that? Which hand?
I read the hand the person writes with as the dominant hand.
Okay.
In the old days, they used to believe the palms never changed. They thought that the lines stayed the same, but the lines change frequently. And, if you take a photograph of your palm over a period of 6 months, you will see how many changes come during that time. But I personally read the writing hand as the active hand. Not every palmist uses their own technique. Mine is slightly Western and Eastern palmistry, so I use a mixture of both.
Is there something that can be gained by looking at the less dominant hand?
Yes, you find the person's emotions in there. What they keep inside almost shows in their less dominant hand, but also your actual destiny path shows in that hand as well, what you will be aspiring towards. And you can also read a person's karma, their past life and their karmic tests normally show in the less dominant hand. So you could read that as the hand for the soul and the emotional life.
Okay.
And just out of curiosity, some hands have long fingers, some are stubby. Does that interplay with palmistry?
Oh yes, the fingers show us a lot about a person and their characters. The shorter the fingers, in comparison to the center of the palm, the more impatient a person is. And the longer the fingers, the more maybe creative and artistic and imaginative they can be. But sometimes they'd have to really focus it.
Huh.
So really you want your middle finger to be the same length as your palm. That would be classed as the right length fingers.
Oh, okay. All right.
And another thing that you can tell, and this is not palmistry, but it could be related, doctors, or some doctors, can tell your health by looking at your nails. The shape or the color and different things of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's scientifically, that's a
Right.
known fact.
Yeah.
Well, in the past, doctors used to do the palm. They referred a lot to the palm. And gradually over, by about the 17th century, it was more associated with gypsies, fortune telling. But in the ancient days, the doctors told a lot from palmistry. And they still do now. Often when a baby is born, they will look at the palm to see if it's, Down syndrome, that can often show. If you have blood conditions, they often look at your palm as well as the nails. But yes, the nails show ever such a lot about your mental and physical health.
And then I've heard also if there's a crease in your earlobe, that means you've got high cholesterol.
Okay.
But that's interesting to know. Yeah,
I-
learn every day.
I noticed that sometimes the palms of the hand, if you stretch out, will turn a different color. And I noticed that sometimes I see a dark green or some kind of color. Is that just that the blood is rushing, when you stretch out your hand, or are colors significant to a palm?
Yes, colours are significant to a palm. I've not actually, I must admit, seen a green palm. So maybe that's your psychic vision seeing an aura as well, maybe.
Okay.
But we have a very strong chakra point in the centre of both of our palms. And if a person, for example, if you're anemic or very tired or drained, your palm will be very pale. If you're feeling blue, your palm will be blue.
Huh.
If if your palm's a bit yellow coloured, that would indicate that your digestive system is not quite working right and you need a detox. when it's bright red, the person can be very angry or very passionate about something. The colour of the palm changes frequently, sort of daily and hourly. If you say you were driving to work and you had a bit of a road rage incident, somebody cutting you up, straight away that can reflect in the colour of your palm. If you have a shock, it goes very pale. But if the centre of your palm sinks in, so it's known as a bowl, it goes in slightly, that shows you're very drained, and you need to try and make sure you are, you know, filling yourself with light and really trying to rebalance your energies.
I see.
It's like a pre-warner of being, you know, exhausted almost, really.
Sometimes I also see numbers on you know, you know how the mind can sort of.
That's just because you got a tight grip on your money, and it's just.
But maybe that's it. but what do numbers? You know, sometimes you look at it and you see shades or outlines of numbers.
Yeah, that again would be your intuition. I mean, if you're seeing colours and numbers, it may be worth you looking more into the palm, because it obviously is one of your tools that would work for you. Because you do see numbers, you often see shapes. I see the runes, the Norse alphabet in the palm a lot as well, different symbols, but most of that is intuitive. So you can often you can learn the palm scientifically, as doctors used to, and you do not need to be a tall psychic to read a palm and logically understand it. But you can also read the palm intuitively. Huh. So you can hold the palm, you get the basic lines, and then you connect with the person, and you can see pictures. And I often look at a palm and I will see moving pictures or words or sometimes names across the palm, but that is intuitively. And the next person I do might not see any of that, and I just have to read it logically. But I teach palmistry, and I love teaching it because it can help people in business, helps with marriages, helps with confidence. It's a really good tool for people to understand.
As a matter of fact, you have a couple workshops coming up. One on the basics palmistry, and on karmic palmistry.
Yes.
How do people have to come over to England to see you at your place, or can they do it online? The workshops?
No, we can. Yes, we can do it online. I do teach people all over the world with the palm, and then they send me photographs. I give them a bit of homework, so they have to learn to read somebody's palm, and I help them develop through the stages. And you can do it as a basic, or you can do it obviously much more involved. It took me about 15 years to properly, I would say, really understand the palm. And I was very lucky. I have a shop now, but I used to have another shop years ago with a friend. And a little Indian palmist guru came in, and I don't know his name, unfortunately, but he was very, very respected at the time in his country, and he taught me ever such a lot about Indian Eastern palmistry, which I then went on and learnt more about. And they do it slightly different to Western palmistry, but it's very interesting.
Huh, that is interesting. So what's the difference between palmistry and karmic palmistry?
Well, the karmic palmistry shows you if you're following your soul's destiny properly.
I see.
And it can help you understand what type of karmic test you have and what type of message you're meant to send to the world. Like if you have an M, sometimes the lines form a big initial M. I would just draw one on my hand to show you. Sometimes the major lines will form this M shape between the lifeline, the headline, the heart line. That's known as the old soul's marking. Oh. So when you have an M on your hands with your lines, that would show you are meant to influence many people's lives. I would imagine both of you would have an M.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
on your hand. And if it's not quite fully formed, it means you're going to be changing your format slightly or bringing, because the deeper the M becomes, the more you're on the right pathway. So karmic palmistry is more for the measure of the soul's progression, and the hand you write with shows what's happening on your day-to-day life.
So should the M be on your less prominent hand? Or
For the
on,
soul path, yes, it should be on the less prominent hand.
Okay.
And if it's in the prominent hand, it means you're actively doing it now.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's on both on mine.
Okay, well, good.
Yes, that would show you're going to affect a lot of people.
Okay, very good. Well,
I guess, do you want to go over the parts of the hand
Yeah,
and what
yeah.
what each
Yeah.
of those mean?
Yes, I think that's a good place to start. Basically, when you're looking at a hand, even the way a person presents their hand shows a lot to you. So if they go like that and make it really wide, extravagant gestures, they would be a very open and over-the-top person. If they, sometimes people give you their hands and then they claw it, they bring their fingers back to their self. You know then straight away they're very shy, they're very, they're very private people. Now you can also tell that even if you're just meeting people socially. If you're in a table with people and you see somebody's maybe sitting with their hands clawed in, you know they're quite shy or quite private. So there are lots of other versions, but that's basically a shortened version. If they're rigid, if the fingers are stuck together, the person's rigid thinking, but they probably wouldn't be having a palm reading anyway. And then the fingertips, each finger stands for a different area of your life. They each represent a different part of your life. The fingertips show your head, how you're thinking.
Huh.
If a lot of stress lines on your fingertips, there could be a lot of stress in that area of your life. The middle part of your fingers show your emotions, how you're feeling. So if you suddenly have a cut across the middle part of your finger, say like the middle finger relates to money. So if you were going to suddenly have a cut across the middle part of that finger, it could be maybe a bit of an expense with money that emotionally could leave you feeling a bit stressed.
Huh.
And the bottom part of your fingers relate to our material world. Any lines going horizontally across the fingers show blocks. They're called obstacle lines.
And that's besides the ones that at your knuckles.
Yes, we don't really read those as block lines. They're
Right.
just defined boundary lines, really. So it's really ultimately, almost like the head, the heart, the body. So they relate to different areas of your life. And the thumb has changed a lot over the last few years, because I've taught palmistry for about 20 years, and it used to always only have two phalanges. It used to have the top for willpower and the bottom for logic. It used to just have the two sections. And what has happened in about the last, I'd say, 18 months or 2 years, there's a new line appearing in a lot of people's hands. And it's almost like a third line, about half an inch up from the bottom of the thumb.
That's right here, right? From
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And that shows intuition. I've tuned into it. I've asked my guides and I asked my tarot cards, what does that line represent? Because I'd never seen it before. And then suddenly it was in lots of people's hands, and it ultimately is the subconscious. It's the intuition line. So really that would show, as we're moving on the fifth dimensional energy, we are moving more and more into our priorities are changing more to be our emotional self, right? We're following our psychic self more, and it would show everybody is getting more psychic. Really.
Okay, so you said the middle one's money, right?
The middle one's money.
So what's
It
the
stands
rest?
for men. The first one is called the Jupiter finger, and it basically is your leadership finger. The first one is our confidence, how independent we are. If we're self-employed, most people who are self-employed, that finger moves across from the rest of the fingers. If you meet someone romantically, if that finger's really out like that, that person's a very busy person. They have many interests. It's not selfish. It's just self-motivated.
I guess I would be.
Like yours does. Yours is very much like that. So that shows you are an independent thinker who is able to lead many other people. They're normally teachers. You often have a square on the mount underneath that finger, and it's known as the teacher's square.
Huh.
But if you look at there, you'd find like a little square, and that shows you're meant to teach people.
Yeah.
So it's a very motivated finger. It's very positive. But if it was very small, some people's are very small, and whereas yours comes out, some people's are very clawed, and that will show they've had their confidence knocked out of them. So if you were going to employ somebody to be your manager of your business, you would not employ somebody whose Jupiter finger was very small or clawed, because you would know they maybe wouldn't have the courage to speak up if there was a problem. So the middle finger relates to men and money. So it's authority. It's Saturn, and the planet Saturn, it rules our karma. It's like old father time. So the middle finger mainly links to things like money, and when we say authority, it would be things like bills, taxes, rules, regulations. So anything going on under that finger shows how much duty or responsibility the person would carry. So if you have a strong Saturn finger, it shows you are a person who carries a lot of responsibility or worries a lot about the future and authority, doing everything right. If you have a Saturn finger that's quite independent and sort of on its own, or very thin, these people are, they will just do their own thing again. They're not always, they would want to go live off grid if it was too independent. They wouldn't even want to be part of society in that way. So the Saturn finger tells us a lot about a person, and how they deal with money.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I've got kind of fat fingers. You might have somebody that's really skinny, slender, or fat like mine. What does that denote?
You obviously have to take on account into the person's build. So if you had very skinny fingers and you were quite a big built person, that would show the more thin they are, the more vulnerable the person would be. But if I was reading for someone who's only very thin, slender person anyway, I would expect them to have slender fingers. But when your fingers are very very swollen. I mean, yours are quite big fingers, but they're not overly swollen. We wouldn't call them swollen.
Right.
The only one that's a little bit too swollen, your work finger, the bottom of your work finger, could indicate you're doing too many things, really, because it's a little bit congested. So you might find you're being pulled in too many ways, almost in a way. So you would need to learn to filter it out a bit, or to make time to say no. So.
Okay, so ring finger.
The ring finger is our social finger. It links to work. That's the work finger, and the socializing finger. And it's called the Apollo finger. And basically, again, the top bit shows your head, the middle bit shows your emotions, and the bottom bit shows more the work area. And you can see with your bottom bit is slightly congested and a slightly different colour compared to the rest of fingers slightly. It's just a little bit, it's more on one side, so you could find you're having too much, maybe being pulled in two directions or something. But you also have a very strong line going up to it called the Apollo line, which is really good, because that's anything new you want to do with writing, if you decide to sort of write a book or write an article. And I suppose in a way with this forum, you're educating people, but it looks like you're going to start a new project soon that you can feel quite enthusiastic about and quite excited about, but it could involve writing or that sort of thing. So, but that's why we wear our wedding ring on our Apollo finger, because it's showing society we are committed, because that's the finger that links to society.
Yeah, I just don't wear mine.
Yeah, no, a lot of men don't wear their wedding ring really, because it's impacted sometimes as well. on the whole, we would, if we were going to wear a commitment ring, it would be on that finger. And then the Mercury finger, the little finger, is known as the Mercury finger. And that ultimately links to, really, its main link is family, relationships, unique and independent thinking. How we would channel comes in a lot through that finger. If you're going to be connecting to spirit, that again, that finger often comes out. If somebody has quite a gap between that finger and the rest of their hand, again, they are their own thinker. They are independent, the same as the Jupiter. Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury links to communication and how we communicate to people and how we reach out to people and how much we need people. So they're very interesting. And the thumb is how we present ourselves to the world, almost, really. So even if we're feeling really low or down or whatever, if your thumb comes out, it would show you very friendly and very open to new experiences. But when people have been hurt or divorced or lost their confidence, bit by bit, their thumb comes more and more into their hand. Huh. And often, if you just watch anybody, even in a meeting or something, you'll notice sometimes somebody's thumb bends right over and they tuck it in because they're unsure of what they want to say. They're unsure, their confidence has been knocked. And if it's very low set, again, they've lost their confidence. And if it's very high set, they're very controlling and very bossy.
Now, I've seen some thumbs where they curve out.
You mean this way or?
Curving away from the hand.
The actual tip of, where your hand's quite open there, where your thumb's like that, that shows you're open to new experiences and you're open-minded. But sometimes if the tip of the thumb actually bends over like an arch.
From this joint that way.
From the middle point, yeah. So it's their willpower. Basically, the tip of your thumb relates to your willpower. And when it bends over too much, it means the person has no willpower almost. They bend over backwards for people, or, they need to really work hard to have that willpower boundary.
I've also heard the mound of Venus here.
Yes.
If this is fat and meaty or more, I don't know, sexual or have a lot of
physical.
Yes, it shows the Mount of Venus relates to your heart chakra, basically. So the more plump it is, the more open the person is to enjoying experiences. But if it's really large or very red, it could show the person is slightly hedonistic. It could be too much to do with physical pleasure. So what you want is someone who's got quite a bouncy Mount of Venus, quite bouncy and padded and nicely pink, but not, if you were going to go with someone who's too much, they may be, they often gamblers will have that massive Mount of Venus as well, because they're all searching for something that they can't find. But again, even that day, you can work on things and you can change your path. So if you see you have, say, lack of willpower in your palm, you can consciously, actively work on that part of your subconscious, and gradually the thumb comes up and, the mount goes into a more, the padded way. So, and all the lines on the Mount of Venus shows you admirers. So if you have a lot of lines coming down it
this
shows
way?
lots of admirers, yes.
Okay.
So that shows that you have a lot of not just romantic admirers. They can be people who admire your work. It shows your heart chakra will be surrounded by, you'll feel happy with the people you're surrounded by.
I've also heard on between the first knuckle on your pinky finger and this line is the number of children. No,
that's quite a big misconception, actually.
Okay.
It shows the number of soulmate relationships.
Oh, right.
Of marriages. But your children
That's
are
right.
actually found here under the little finger in downward, tiny little vertical lines.
Okay.
But that...
Yeah, I forgot
Holy cow, I have 20.
Something you ain't telling us?
I was just going to say,
Yeah, you remind me. This is marriages or relationships because I've got 2 short ones and a long one.
Yeah. And they showed they were all obviously soulmate relationships. They showed the amount of karmic soulmate relationships. So I've done people who've been married 4 times, but they've only had 2 lines on there. And then when you talk to them, 2 of those marriages were done for the wrong reasons, or they married their friend. So it wasn't really a proper heart connection. But the children lines have changed a lot recently. I used to be able to predict how many children a person would have and what sex the baby would be. And since 2012, that has all changed. And so with the children now, I feel it again, it's more about your soul family. Like you sort of made a joke, said, oh, I got 20. That's happening a lot. People who have no children are showing that they've got, say, 6 children. And people who've got 6 children are showing up that they've got, say, 16 children. So I have stopped even trying to look at how many children or what sex, and just seeing it now more as your soul group and your soul family when I do the palm readings.
What's the difference in the sex? I mean, these are very light lines down here, right?
Yeah.
What's the difference between a male and a female?
Well, it used to be always if you had a short straight line, it was always going to be a boy child, and a girl was always a slight curve, a line with a curve, and twins was always like a wishbone shape, the 2 come together. But that's all changed definitely in the last 3 or 4 years. The sexes have all blurred into, so I don't even try and work out the sexes anymore.
Okay.
There's obviously it's just more about the importance of the soul and not the sex of the child.
Okay, before we go into the palm itself, how about wrist lines down in here?
Yes, the wrist lines tend to show, they used to be read sometimes as children lines. What they actually really show, they often show the state of the person's hormones. In a women, they tend to show sort of womb area and the female hormones. In men, they tend to show things like testosterone links and problems. So they're again another line that's changed, really. For their meaning has changed a lot over the last few years.
Okay, so let's move to what's on your hand. And is the lifeline this here?
No, the lifeline is the line that comes around by the thumb. It's normally starts with
so
the
right
first
here,
thumb, and it comes out here. Yes.
Okay.
Sort of like around there. But the lifeline is one of the most misunderstood lines on the palm because it has nothing to do with how long you live.
Okay.
It shows the quality of the life you are living.
So I've got one that comes from here to about halfway, and then it jumps over this way and then continues on.
Because that would show that you make big changes. You make big changes sort of halfway through your life, and you branch out in a new direction. And where it's moving out to is more trying to take you. The further out in your hand the lifeline goes, the more people you will affect in your life, and the more well known you become, really, in a subject. If you look at a famous actor or a musician or something, usually their lifeline veers quite far out because many people know about them. But if it's all very pale, if your lifeline is very pale and has a lot of tiny little lines horizontally going through it, or is very chained, then that would show that you've got a lot of challenges and it's stop, start, and you could be feeling quite frustrated. And if that's the case, just focus on, grounding yourself, do meditation and wait till your life, because you're not necessarily being blocked as a punishment. It could be fate trying to guide you to the right path. But it would show you need to make sure you're taking more care of yourself physically if your lifeline's very blocked and chained, because your vitality would be low.
So is the lifeline a timeline, like start to finish?
It used to be, but that's changed again in the last 5 years. You used to always be able to tell. It used to roughly be a millimetre was about 1.5 years in a person's life. And you used to always be able to tell the age of 21 ended at the end of the Jupiter finger. You would draw with a ruler down to the lifeline, and that would take the person to their young adult years, 21, 22. But that's all changed now. Now we've moved into the fifth dimension. The last couple of years, the timelines, you really, sometimes the past shows up really active. Sometimes the future shows up really active. So wherever the lifeline is redder, you'll have a tiny red point on it. And that's where you are in your lifeline at the moment. If you have a branch line moving out from your lifeline, you could be moving home or starting a new job. Any line coming out from the lifeline shows you're about to do something that takes you out in a new direction.
Okay, so we were talking about left and right. Now my right hand has the lifeline that goes here and then jumps over and starts again. This one over here is not broken but has branches.
Right. I can't see from the picture that clearly.
Right.
But are the branches going down or are they going up?
The first one goes up, the second one goes out this way a little bit.
Right. Well, that would be very interesting then, because the one that goes up is like a leadership marking. So in your future, that would indicate your future in the next few months. You are obviously going to be starting something that is leading other people. You could be branching out, or I don't know if you already do talks to a lot of people, or if this would be classed as talking to a lot of people. But it feels, normally when the leadership line is there, you're talking to a bigger audience of people. The line that branches out would normally indicate you're going to move home, but it could indicate going into a new work premises because you've also got an active leadership line going on. And that line that goes up there in your hand, you don't write with in that hand, also shows in one of your past lives. You were like a shaman, you were in charge of like a tribe at some point on a karmic level. That means you've come back to finish something in a much more diplomatic way. So in a past life, you could have been, more like, right, come on, let's go and, sort of do a rain dance. And this time you could be here to learn to speak and communicate and win battles with words. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So again, the lifeline, whereabouts does it start?
The lifeline starts here it starts on this side where your Jupiter is. The quality of that part, the first sort of inch, shows the quality of your childhood, your younger years. So if it's very changed and very broken, it would show you had a harder time.
Yeah, I have 3 lines.
Okay, the difference between yours and mine, my lifeline crosses this one.
Yeah.
And then his is lower than that for this one here. His starts below and mine starts above and crosses.
Yes, so that would show that obviously where you are in your life now. I mean, I can't see, unfortunately, the pictures aren't close enough. And what I should have got you to do really is email me your palm.
Yeah, we should have.
Yes, we didn't think of that, did we? Because then I would be able to say, oh, you've got this and you've got that.
But that's a good question. If it's above the main line, it starts above the main line and crosses that, whereas mine starts below that line.
It's normal. To be honest, Mike's is the one that's not the most common. Most people's lifelines show up quite far under the sort of headline, like where yours are. And maybe you had either sometimes it could be a more disciplined childhood, or it can be just different, being brought up with maybe different rules and things, and just different timelines.
Oh, okay.
Whereas Mike's, because he starts above his headline, maybe when he was younger, he was more independent thinking, or more vocal when he was a bit younger, maybe a bit more rebellious or something when he was younger, a little bit.
Yeah, I've always been a little bit different. Okay.
Yes.
So, all right. So the one that is coming from below the pinky finger across.
Yeah, that's your heart line.
Okay. So what does that tell you?
Usually the heart line shows the quality of the person's emotional life, how happy they are at that moment in time, what sort of emotional life they've had in their life. That starts under the little finger, under the mercury finger, and it comes across the hand. And the usual place it ends up, it comes across and goes up towards the Jupiter finger. It usually goes in a nice curve.
Mm-hmm.
In men, it's often straight because men are very logical thinking. And the more curved it is, the more emotional and sensitive the person is. So if it's very straight and it ends under the middle finger, the Saturn finger, it would show you can't always do what you want to do because of your duty or paying the bills or paying for your family or something. If it comes up right to the Jupiter finger, it shows you, I could do something you love with work, and you love what you're doing in relationships. So the quality of that line shows how happy you are in relationships. But again, it grows and comes down. And sometimes you have, because you have your heart line, your head line, and your lifeline. Sometimes your head and your heart line are joined together. So you have one thick line across the palm. That's known as the simian line. And that basically means your head and your heart, if you feel something, you feel it very passionately. Sometimes your heart will rule your head, or, it's very intense. You have something in your mind and you can't stop thinking about it. So people who have simian lines find it quite hard to step back or detach. But if there's quite a big gap between the head and the heart line, sometimes, there's quite a big gap, that would show that people the more bigger the gap, the more detached the person is. The smaller the gap, the more emotional the person will be.
Yeah, that mine, what was this, the headline? Is that what it is?
Yes, the headline.
No, that
and the
was heart.
line.
This was heart. So mine comes to directly under the middle finger and then branches out.
Yeah, so what that shows is you've been maybe having to do a lot with work for duty and paying the bills and everything. But the branch lines would be interests you have, new projects, new directions, that you will be branching into. Really.
Yeah, I've just got so many interests, it's just hard to narrow down.
Yeah, so that's why you've got quite a few branch lines. But one of them will get quite deep, and the deeper it becomes, that's the one that you'd follow. So if you start a new project, one of those lines should go quite deep.
Okay, so let's see, the M.
I have another question.
Okay, go ahead.
Right in between the middle and index finger, one of my lines connects to a line that goes straight out to the edge of the palm, right here.
Yeah.
So is that still a heart line?
Could you just hold your hand up so I can see if I can see it? Sorry.
It's not very deep.
Yeah, it's.
Yes,
I've always had that, where one of them would go straight up.
Yeah.
And then one of them would connect to another line.
Yeah, that basically is that normally shows that you should have changed direction quite a lot around the middle part of your life, really.
Yes.
So you could have changed your work direction or moved or gone into that. Usually shows you learn a lot of lessons in one way, and then you have to break away from your patterning and conditioning.
Oh, that's interesting.
What that usually shows.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I think, did we cover this one that goes in this
The
way?
headline, no, we didn't. So
Okay.
the headline, again, basically the headline shows how the person's thinking. There used to be a myth that the longer the headline, the more intelligent the person is. But ultimately, the longer the headline, the more interest the person has. Somebody who studies a lot would have a very long and deep headline because they enjoy learning. Somebody who's just quite happy doing the same thing and they like the routine will have a short headline. And, it just, with each of the lines, the line that is the deepest would show what's important to the person. So if you met somebody who had a very deep headline, that would show they would need an intellectual partner, and people around them intellectually the same. If you met someone whose heartline was the deepest, they'd want more like love and romance, wouldn't mind so much if they wasn't, very intellectually connected, as long as they were, romantically connected. So, and the lifeline, if that's the deepest line on your hand, the person's a real lover, really active with life and wants to be doing lots of hobbies and really living life to the full, really.
Now, do you read the lines going from bottom up and then
Yes.
left to right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The headline goes right to left, and the lifeline comes from the
Oh.
inside. Only the heart line that comes from the outer edge of the
Oh,
palm.
okay. I see it. Yeah. Huh.
Okay, so the one that's here in the center, like if you were to draw an M, it's the second line you would draw. So it'd be up
Yeah.
and then down.
Yeah, that's your fate line. That's your Saturn line.
Okay.
And it's known as your fate line or your destiny line. And basically what the Saturn line shows is if it's not there at all, it would indicate you've gone off your pathway slightly. So if there is no Saturn line at all on your hand, you've maybe blocked yourself off your soul path. But the Saturn line, the deeper the line, the more driven and successful the person will be. If it's meant to start at the bottom of your hand and go all the way up to your middle finger. And if that does go up there, it shows that it's good with money and wealth and property. But usually you have a lot of blocks on the outside, things get in the way, and if there was going to be a problem at work or you were going to lose your job or something, your Saturn line would break or fray for a little while, because it would show that your destiny is being forced to be changed, your career paths. And if it breaks and changes a lot, it shows the person does several careers in their lifetime before they find the right lifetime.
Yeah, the one on my right hand has like a couple branches, but it goes all the way from probably the wrist up.
Yes.
And
Yes,
then
that shows that you're ultimately following the right path.
and the one on the left hand goes from the wrist, and it's not broken, and it goes all the way up to.
Yeah, that's definitely, that would show you're definitely following the right soul path. So, because the one on the left hand, or the one on the hand you don't like would be the most important one to monitor, because that shows your quality for your future. So if you were going to suddenly decide to invest, say, all your money in a car or something, if that line suddenly disintegrated, you would be making a big mistake. It would compromise your future security. So it's always, always good to check the hand you don't like with this quality of the Saturn line there.
So does that change before you do something dumb, or does it change after?
Usually about, if you were really convinced on doing something, it literally would change a few days before.
Huh.
Okay.
I had a
Interesting.
friend who was going into business, and that his line disappeared, and I said, oh, please don't do that, because it's going to really destroy you. And it did, unfortunately, because he said, oh, I've got to do it anyway. But his Saturn's lines had literally just broken up, fragmented within a few days.
Okay, so we talked about the Venus. How about this fatty thing over here?
Yeah, well, this bit over here is the lunar mount. So, like where you've got the Venus mount there, you've got the lunar mount there, and that's more to do with your creativity, your psychic intuition. In the old days, when it was very swollen, they used to think somebody was a lunatic, unfortunately. If they were too creative or talking like I'm talking now, they would have thought, oh, you're mad, or lock her away. But luckily these days, we embrace the psychic side. We embrace the more padded that is, the more creative the person is. But if your headline goes down into the lunar mount, if it's only touching the top of it, that's fine. That shows you use your creative imagination. But if it goes all the way down to the lunar mount, it can show an addictive tendency, like too much alcohol or drug use, and that can be, worrying. But obviously, if a parent was wondering if their teenager or whatever was drinking too much or something, they could always check on the headline. And if it goes down into the lunar, then, you know, the person's definitely starting an addictive problem.
How about health problems? Where do you find health problems in the palm?
It's too vast, and I wouldn't like to say on here because it could be read as so many other things.
Okay.
So I would only do that if somebody really understood the palm. Otherwise, I don't want to worry everybody.
Right.
Unnecessarily.
It's like people reading health things on the internet. It's like, oh my God, I've got that too.
Yes, that's it. So with the palm, because what can indicate health problem can also indicate lots of other things as well. So unless you knew the palm properly, I would always just say to someone, go to the doctors, you know, go and get diagnosed properly.
What does it mean for the little pinky? There's a line that goes straight down.
That's very good, that line. It's known as its real name is a medical hepatica, but they call it the success line. And the deeper it is, the more positive and enthusiastic you will be feeling. And if somebody's single and they have that line coming in, that shows they're going to meet a relationship that's very passionate and very energized. And if they're already in a relationship, it would show they're going to be maybe going on holiday or spending some time with a partner that they feel very passionate about something. It's a really good line to have, that line is.
I've just got kind of light and broken. And then his is more like straight.
Yes, well, often it is broken, but that would indicate you have to make sure you are keeping an eye on your health a little bit. Make sure you don't fall down without eating and eat late at night, or, you know, it comes and goes, that line. So some days you have it, other days you won't have it at all. But when it does start showing up a bit fragmented or broken, it's just a little warning to just keep an eye on your energy levels and make sure you're getting enough sleep, that type of thing.
So is there anything else that we haven't talked about? And I guess the other thing, not sure if we covered it deep enough, was past lives and what you can gain from that, or where you would look for that.
Well, you'd look for the past lives on the hand you do not write with. That shows everything, shows up there. And you can gain a lot from it. You know, often if you think, say with money, for example, if you were having blocks of money or you have been ripped off, it could be helpful to look on that hand and think, oh, that's because, you know, in a past life I maybe abused money, or I spent too much on the wrong thing. So it can help you to understand. And the only thing I would say to people to look out for, really, because we haven't got time really to go in depth about the karmic thing, but if you have what looks like a T, a shape of a T, if that initial appears anywhere, say under the money finger, that would indicate a block with money. Under the work finger, that can indicate a block with work. That's a karmic test. So basically, if you remember T for test, so if it was on your Venus mount, it would indicate the relationship you're in is going to be a test. So if something's happened that you don't understand, if you've got a T in several areas of say it was in your self-confidence and somebody had run off and rejected you to go off with another person, if you had a T there, it would show in a past life you did that, so you've been sort of balanced out in a way. And the other marking that shows karma is going on at the time is a pyramid, and it's a triangle. But it has to be a separate triangle, not made up of lots of lines. It's a separate individual triangle. And where you have a triangle in the hand you do not write with shows there's a karmic test in that area, or a karmic gift. I had a client recently who had a lot of money. They had a triangle on their money line, on their Saturn line. And there's another line that shows if you're going to win the lottery, you will get like a horizontal line coming in from the edge of your hand, where that lunar mount is, and it joins into your Saturn line. So if ever you get a horizontal line appearing, then it's worth buying one lottery ticket or scratch card. Right. But the little triangles would show it's a karmic test. So obviously to just be, it doesn't change what you've gone through, but if you understand it's part of your soul's growth to learn patience or endurance or forgiveness, it can help you move on. between the area of the head and the heart line in the hand you don't write with, if that's very red and sort of sometimes very sore looking, that shows the person has got to forgive somebody from the past. And if it comes out under the Saturn finger, it's forgiving a male. If it comes out on the Venus mount a bit red and sore looking, it's forgiving a female from the past. That's part of their karmic test, and they're holding on to it, and it's causing them blocks now. So it does help people a lot to understand what's happening karmically for them as well.
Well,
I know somebody else that's got a lot of light but very noticeable lines up and down each of these fingers. So what is that? Good to know.
Well, it depends on the depth. The ones that are deeper, normally any lines going up the hand are often up the fingers are often referred to as success lines. That's what they are known as. And basically they are people who have to work hard. They maybe had to overcome challenges, but they have the strength to overcome challenges. But if they're very, very, very fine, and you've got, say, some deep and some very fine, it can mean they work very hard, they put a lot of effort in, but they do not necessarily receive enough financial gain for the amount of hours they're putting in. And often people who help at charities and things like that will often have them in their Saturn finger, lots of very, very fine lines, but not enough depth for them, really. So because they're maybe given their time and energy to help the good of the community. But if they're deep lines going up, if they're noticeable, if you look and you can see them without a magnifying glass, that indicates success will come in the end. Sometimes not till the person's older, but it will come. You know, success and happiness will come.
Okay, I've only got one other question, and it's kind of weird, but I've known woodworkers, and other than being stupid, does it mean anything if you've lost part of your fingers?
Yes, it comes out ever such a lot. When people have gone through, say, a divorce or separation, they'll cut off the top of their relationship finger. Say you cut off the top of your Saturn finger, it could indicate you had so much maybe damage in the past that it's almost like, you know, you've cut your old head off sort of thing and you're ready to move forward. And it does often come out when people have had quite extreme challenging lives, people who cut their fingers off, or tips. Often people cut the tip of their finger off. The finger they cut would show the area of their life where they're having challenges. Even us, even if you haven't cut your finger off, if you get a cut, say on the first fingertip, it would show you've got issues about self-confidence within yourself. On the money finger, it would show you worrying about money. On the work and social finger, it would show you maybe not sure what's going on, or can you trust everyone. And on the Mercury finger, it would show you've maybe got worries about your family or relationships and things, and you can't really communicate freely. So everything, every mole you get can show a karmic test or a block from that area. Anything on the outside of your hand shows how other people affect you. If you cut the outside of your hands, it shows the person's been hurt by outside people. And everything going on the inside of your hand is what you keep private to yourself, but it's what you're feeling.
What happens if you have a wart on a finger?
That's a past life marking normally. A wart would indicate an ancestral block. Sometimes we inherit blocks from our ancestors. So say in the old days where they didn't have money, they wouldn't spend any or something. So if you had a wart on your money finger, you would have an inherited fear or a poverty consciousness that you would need to work through and clear.
Huh.
Now, I know somebody else that had a bit of cancer on one of their fingers and had to have part of it removed too.
Yeah, that would, do you know if it was on the hand they wrote with or the other hand?
I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember. What would it mean either way?
Well, if it was on the hand that they wrote with, it would show they'd had an extremely stressful life. And there were certain areas almost that they wouldn't be able to come to terms with. So almost in a way, having part of it taken away is like having to really move away from the past. But if it was on the other hand, it would show it's like a past life karmic thing that they're clearing and sorting out. You know, they would have lost their self. They would have had to work very hard on learning self-love and, you know, sort of self-belief and everything.
Okay, that's pretty interesting.
Donna, I know we've just touched a little bit. I want to again recommend that the viewers go to donnamaxine.com. There she lists out the different workshops. You have one coming up, Introduction to Palmistry. Karmic Palmistry is another one. Scrying. So your website is well done.
Are these workshops something that you can do on your own, or is it a interactive personal session?
No, normally, well, the workshops I do, obviously in people with groups, so obviously that's interactive. But usually it's a long distance learning, palmistry and things, and tarot. I teach the tarot through long distance as well. They usually do that on their own. But I am just looking now at doing maybe like a Skype sort of lessons where people can join in and maybe help each other as well. So got hands to practice on and things. But yes, it's the long distance working, especially with the palm and the tarot, do seem to work quite well. So,
and it's very easy to get in touch with you. You have a contact me in which individuals can put in their name and an email address and perhaps a note to you.
Yes. I mean, my sister helps me with quite a lot of my admin because I do, get quite a lot of questions and things quite, and I have got a waiting list if anyone was trying to book in a reading with me. I have quite a long waiting list, but, we get there in the end. So, and I do email readings for people that maybe can't speak English, they transfer it to their language, or if they just live in a different time zone, I do that as well. So.
And then you also have a number of different articles ranging from cleansing your auras to chakras, channeling energy.
Right, you do a lot more than just palm readings,
right.
tarot, and
right.
all kinds of stuff.
Yes, I work with energy. I mean, I work with auras. I think it's very important with people. It's good to come to people like myself for readings or palm guidance, but it's very, very important at the moment to clear our aura and keep our energy as clear as possible. We wouldn't go for weeks without washing our hair or having a shower or something. And the energies are shifting and changing so dramatically at the moment with everything that's happening in the world. It's really important to keep your aura as balanced and your chakras as balanced and clear. So I spend a lot of time, I do aura clearing with people, and I spend a lot of time helping others to sort of help themselves, because it's an ongoing thing. You can't just have one healing session and that's it. This day and age, we have to consciously be aware of clearing and releasing. It's all very simple, but yeah, I've got a lot on my website to just help people understand a little bit about chakras and things like that, and which guidance, which planetary star line they may feel drawn to, because if you have maybe more of a Syrian energy, it means one thing, or if you're drawn to Pleiades, it means another thing. So I have got quite a lot of information on my website to try and help.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Donna, I'm sorry that the time has come to an end, because Mike and I have a whole list of questions we wanted to ask.
This has been very informative,
Yes.
but we'll have to have you back on
Yeah.
to talk about some of your other specialties.
So
It's been nice to see you, yeah.
So we're talking with Donna Maxine White. She's out of Dorset, England. She's an individual that can assist in many different ways, not just in palmistry, but other places.
Right.
So on behalf of all of us, I'm Patrick, and I thank you for listening.
And I'm Mike. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.